To see you all. Hi,
Hi,
Meara.
hi, Emily. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, perfectly.
Perfect. Awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to have you on here today, and I'm excited to learn more. But how have online classes been going for you? Has teaching been okay?
Yeah, so we did an online virtual meeting for my gender class on Monday, but we actually met in person today. And it was, I mean, we're a
Awesome.
smaller class, so we can all meet at the same time. There's just over 20 of us.
Okay.
And It was great. We had good discussion, talked about diversity. It was fun. I'm hoping they liked it. I don't know. I loved it.
I hope so too. I bet they did. The energy is there, so I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, just to introduce you, everyone, this is Meara Habashi. She is a professor of OVHR in Krannert, but she's also the head of the Brock Wilson Center for Women in Management at Krannert, which is so awesome. I know they have such big things coming this way for this year.
We do.
So I'm excited to hear more about this. And I also just want to share with our viewers, if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat and hopefully we can get to them. If not, maybe they could be answered a little later for you. So thank you again for joining us. And I want to start off with one question. So we came here today, we gathered because today was the ratification, or correct me if I'm wrong because I think I am, but the enactment of the 19th Amendment for the right for women to vote, which is awesome. So can you share with me just the importance of the 19th Amendment and really
Sure.
how that started to kick off rights for women?
Yeah, so actually, August 18th is what we call 19th Amendment Day, and that's the day that the 36th state, Tennessee, actually ratified the amendment. So it passed all the necessary hurdles. Today, August 26th, 1920, so exactly 100 years ago, is the day that it was enacted and written into law. And so what happened is in the 1920 presidential election, because that's, 25 presidents ago,
Yeah.
25 presidential elections, I should say, ago, 8 million women voted for the very first time. 8 million, and I should be very clear, 8 million white women voted for the
Yes.
very first time. And
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I mean, I think for over a century, for over 100 years, women were fighting for a voice. And the 19th Amendment was that voice. So it didn't allow discrimination of any citizen voting based on their sex. And that's a pretty huge accomplishment for women. I mean, having a voice, being able to affect the law and affect the people that are governing you
Yeah.
is a really big piece of having a say in how our society and our culture moves forward. And for hundreds of years, women weren't allowed to have that voice. And I think it's so important that they finally did.
I
So,
agree, definitely. I think with the women's suffrage movement, it's had a really big impact on just what I've learned throughout feminist history. So
yeah.
it's amazing to learn. But I did want to comment on something else because you did mention that this law was able or only able for white women to join. And I do know
Yeah.
that the women's suffrage movement was largely white middle class women. So can you tell me what this meant for women of color within the United States after the 19th Amendment was enacted?
Well, I think overwhelmingly, people kind of are aware and agree that the feminist movement was largely a movement for white women. And the idea was that the feminist movement was really pushing for things that women of color and, especially Black women were already doing. So women wanted the right to work outside the home, and
Mhm.
Black women and women of color were often doing those things already to support their families. And so they had felt kind of left out. And I think the ratification and then the enactment of the 19th Amendment also left them out. But it was a big step in moving towards equality for those groups as well, right? I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, without giving white women the right to vote, women of color never would have had it either, right? And so this was a step
Great point.
in, it gave people hope. And I think, after the women's suffrage group really kind of got that, they did turn their attention to kind of creating the Equal Voting Rights Amendment. And that
Mhm.
gave other people the right to vote as well. And I shouldn't say it was all groups. So in 1924, Native Americans actually gained the right to vote, and that was much quicker than many of the other groups because Puerto Rico residents, which are still citizens of the United States, women were not granted access to the ballot until 1935, Puerto Rican women. So Latino women weren't really granted until 1935. Chinese American women, who were still somewhat considered white until a little bit after that, were not able to vote until 1943. And then African American and Black women followed very, very late behind in 1965. So it took almost 50 years for all women to be able to vote. But it's a process, right? You start with one group and then you kind of move into those other groups. And that ratification for even one group of women was a step towards ratification for all women. So.
Yeah, definitely. And Meara, I told you I was excited to learn new information, and that is such an important piece that I truly did not know. I
Yeah,
think it's very easy to just assume that the 19th Amendment gave everyone the right to vote, and you're like,
yeah.
it's all good, it's done, and that's actually not what happened. And it's important to understand that history. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you for sharing.
I think people aren't aware, I mean, I think it's often not drawn out to our attention how different and segregated, everything was for a very long time.
Mhm.
And so, and I should say, it wasn't just African American women who got the right to vote in 1965. It was the majority of African American and Black people. So
Right.
even men weren't allowed
Mhm.
to vote. And that's because of things like Jim Crow laws and some
Mhm.
of you know, the segregation that was still occurring in the United States at the time. And
Yes.
so it's important to recognize that this was a struggle for everybody and not just women.
Very true. That's very true. And thank you for sharing. So I also want to ask you that, I mean, the importance of the 19th Amendment, as we talked about, again, very important. But what does this sort of movement mean for the Brock Wilson Center? This is something I know you guys are focusing on. So I want to ask, like, what does this mean in right terms of voting, and how does this affect the Brock Wilson Center?
Well, I think, what's really special about the Brock Wilson Center is we are poised to work with a group of people who are new to the voting game, right? I mean, many of our students on campus, because we only vote for presidents every 4 years, many of our
Mhm.
students on campus have never voted in a presidential election before. And you
Mhm.
haven't, see?
No, this will be my first year.
And it'll be fun. I mean, I think
Mhm.
and I think that people don't really understand. I think, especially in the last few elections, people often think, well, my vote doesn't really count. And it does. Every vote matters. And if you've watched
Yeah.
some of the speeches from all the national conventions, I mean, it's expected to be a really tight fight. A
Mhm.
really close election this year. I
Yeah.
mean, when you average some of the swing states from some of the last elections, I think across precincts, it was 2 votes per precinct in some states that really kind of determined where those electoral votes would go. And so I think it's really important for people to remember that voting is being heard, right? It's our way to tell politicians and tell the people who govern us that this is what we want. This is how we feel. And these are the policies and the procedures that we want in place as citizens of the United States. And thinking that your voice doesn't matter is really belittling yourself, right? Your voice
Okay.
matters, and you should take that opportunity. And I think we are especially poised to kind of be able to push that, right? To remind our students and our population that your voice matters. And I think it's an important message because people often forget it, especially when you haven't done it before, right? Plus,
Very true.
there's just something about being able to go vote and get that little "I voted" sticker and wearing it around all day. Like
Very
it's
true.
awesome. My kids always point to it and say, "Mommy, you voted today," and it's a point of pride. It's a right you have as a citizen, a right that many of our ancestors fought
Mhm.
for hundreds of years, and it's not something that should be taken lightly.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I also wanted to ask about how the Brock Wilson Center will be like moving forward within this campaign of voting. So I know you guys do have some new practices, and I would love to hear any more information that you would like to share about the center and just kind of like their ideas moving forward.
Yeah. So as you kind of alluded to, my first and primary role when I came to Krannert 4 years ago, well, I can't believe it's been that long. I'm a senior, right?
Yeah.
Was a faculty member. And then recently, so just in May, I stepped into the role of director of the Brock Wilson Center. And so to that end, we're really going to kind of redefine what's going on in the center. We want to have a much stronger student focus and focus a little bit more on preparation of Krannert students and students at Purdue, so not limited
Okay.
to Krannert students, really kind of being prepared to work in a diverse workforce. And I think that's really important. I mean, everybody's aware of all the social issues that are
Mm-hmm.
currently afflicting our country. And I think that with everything going on, understanding how to navigate work in that space is really important. And so to do that, we've launched what we're thinking of as 3 new campaigns.
Okay.
The voting campaign will be a piece of one of those. And so if you've got the time, Emily, I'd love to talk about the 3 campaigns that we're actually going to run.
Yeah.
That'd be great. And I actually have little visuals that I'm going to put up since I can't actually, just to remind people of what it is, because it makes more sense when you see it written out.
Okay.
So we're relaunching our image as BWC is for her, with the her being in all capitals. And I want to make sure that people out there are aware that that does not limit us to women, because men can be for her as well, right?
Yeah.
And so we are allies to women, and we are really kind of trying to prepare our men and women to work in those spaces with diverse people. And so we are kind of launching what we're calling the BWC is for her image. Okay. Now, under that, there's 3 campaigns that we're actually going to be running. And each of these campaigns are going to incorporate the different initiatives that we actually will be piloting, but also have been doing for years, right? For the 2 or 3 years that we've been in existence. And so really, as I've been kind of navigating this new systemic racism space that exists in our society, right? Going to all these webinars and listening to speakers and workshops, because that's the space I work in. I work in the diversity space. One of the things that really has struck me is that as an individual, if I really want to be equitable and committed to diversity, I have to I have to see, hear, and speak gender equity, right? And so the role of the center will be to show, to teach, and to enact, right? And that's our see, hear, and speak. And we're going to focus on gender equity, but bringing an intersectional piece to that as well. So not just white women. And so our first campaign is going to be what we call the See Her campaign. And so now you see why I have the visuals, because the her has to be capitalized.
I understand.
Yeah. And so See Her is really going to be focus on bringing light to the invisibility that is bias that exists, right? I mean, there's so much bias that's implicit, that's invisible, that we're not aware of. And so this is the piece where our hope is that we'll start a diversity speaker series focused on intersectionality. So bringing in women of color, bringing in LGBTQ women that have been working towards or have successfully kind of created equitable gender equity in their life or nationally. So we're looking at some pretty big name speakers. Cross your fingers that they're able to come. But we're also looking at some industry and alumni people, some faculty researchers that are kind of working in that space, because even you can work towards gender equity at a national scale, but you can also work at gender equity in your own life, right? Overcoming that bias and overcoming those obstacles. And so that's one piece, and it's really kind of bringing light to women who are working in that space. So you're seeing kind of gender diversity. The second piece, we're going to launch on social media our Women of the Week campaign. And so we'll be highlighting women who are connected to or in some way kind of important to the center, but also to Krannert. And our hope is that we'll start with our namesake. I cannot not mention Jane Brock Wilson, who has been a super wonderful supporter of our center. But then also we have our student, what we call Fembassadors, who will also be highlighted, some faculty, some staff. We have some great alumni. We have wonderful supporters at every level of the university. And we really want to start kind of showcasing those women, because there's so many people who are connected that are doing great things. And so those will be posted hopefully once a week, starting in the next week or 2. So follow us to see that on our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page for sure. And that's really See Her. So bringing visibility to women who are working towards equity. The second piece, and that's probably where we exist in the most space, is what we're calling the Empower.
Beautiful.
And that's going to be our educational piece. And so we run a high school course over the summer, a women's empowerment course. It's called Empowering Women in Business for high school juniors and seniors, where they do a little business pitch competition, like a Shark Tank. But they also learn we role play gender obstacles, we role play negotiation, we talk about confidence, we talk about diversity. And that's a big piece of what we do. We have our new learning community. So we just rolled out our Women in Management learning community. And it's going to be a little bit strange, COVID times, but we're doing it anyway. It'll be great. And then, I teach the gender course, like we talked about at the beginning of the class.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a piece of it. We have a Men as Allies student organization. So if you're looking to get involved in that, that's an educational piece. It teach men how to be allies. They workshop, they do some bystander intervention stuff. We have our Women in Business group at both the undergrad and the graduate level, which Emily, I'm pretty sure, are you a member of it? Yes.
I used to be, but not anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, you should be.
I am.
So, yeah. So that's our student organization. They bring in speakers, often women who talk about working in those spaces, but those are all educational pieces, right? Where we're talking about how to combat gender bias, how to kind of be an advocate. And we're really educating people on what exists and the strategies you can use. And then our final piece, which is the piece we're actually rolling out today, the reason we're doing this, is our Be Heard piece, right? And finding your voice. So now that you've kind of seen what gender equity looks like, now that you've heard what gender equity looks like, because we've taught you, now you're going to speak it. You're going to walk the walk, talk the talk, right? And so the Be Heard is really the action item. So it's our call to action. So today we're rolling out Be Heard as a call to voting, a call to action, because, women and kind of intersectional men fought for that right for over 100 years, some groups 200 years, and it's important to make sure that you're heard. We'll also be, we also have our Power Shift case competition every spring. The hope is that that is in person this year, but it may be virtual. We will roll with the punches.
Sure.
And that's an actionable piece, right? Creating solutions that actually kind of push. And we'll be rolling out some more case competition and workshop type stuff where we're creating solutions in that way. So those are kind of the 3 campaigns that we'll start running. If you follow us, you'll see our hashtags. We're going to use them all as hashtags, kind of outlining our events. So yeah, that's our new role. We're rolling it out with today, with this. So
wonderful. Meara, this is absolutely wonderful. And I just wanted to touch on the fact that you tied together so perfectly every single aspect of this, all of the stages. And I think we talked earlier, just the fact that being able to see people and see people from different points of view is so important. And you were bringing that to life so perfectly. I cannot wait for this center to be just so much more inclusive, and it's going to be great. And you also talked about women in business. I do know that our presidents of the Women in Business organization have been doing amazing things. And the Brock Wilson and the Women in Business tags will be shared after this session is posted live to our story. So check them out because they are doing amazing work, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think Women in Business has a big push for intersectionality as well and bringing more diversity to their group, and we are as well. So we're really hoping to get some, and it's not just women of color. I mean, there's LGBTQ women that we want to highlight, women with disabilities, first generation educational women. I mean, all of these are hidden groups that face these obstacles, both in an educational setting, but and in a work setting, right? And so having those relationships with our students for them to kind of talk about these things, I think is a big piece. And so I love that you love it, because I'm hoping people love it.
I think they will. There's no way. Also, just to take the time to learn more is such a big point of our whole education. So I really do think the people are going to learn so much from this. So I'm excited. And I'm so happy we got to highlight this together, which is awesome.
Me too. It's a really nice rollout to have you rolling it out for us, Emily. I mean, I see all these people who love you on Instagram, so I'm like, wow, Emily's going to make this work for us.
We got it. We've got this down. Perfect. I'm so happy we were able to connect. And is there anything else you wanted to share to any of the viewers about the center or just the future or the semester of Krannert?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it takes a whole community to make a space really inclusive and equitable. And so this is not something the center really can do on its own. We need our students, we need our alumni, we need our staff, we need our faculty, we need our administrators, right? We need every level of this university if we really want to have an equitable and an inclusive space here at Purdue, and especially at Krannert. I mean, Krannert is so great in that it's a community. We are a community of people, and we're a smaller community than maybe some of the other colleges on campus, but that allows us to kind of be close and have great relationships. And I think that it takes that whole community to really bring us all together, to work towards equity, to work towards inclusion, and to really make this a safe space for all the students that we want to have here at Krannert. And so my hope is that everybody watching this and everybody who's going to watch this later and everybody who's not going to watch this really gets involved. I mean, we need our alumni. We want to provide mentorship to our students, especially our female students. We need our students because, I mean, we have a great group of ambassadors. I mean, I want to call out every single one of their names, but I don't know how much time we have, that are working. I mean, all those posts that are going up, this Instagram Live, it was all coordinated through our ambassadors, and they are a fantastic group of people. And we could use more of them. Take the diversity classes that we teach here at Krannert. There's a couple that are listed in the cultural competencies. I think it's important to make yourself aware of the issues that exist and kind of be a good citizen, because that's what we're talking about here. And get involved. I mean, we are not limited to women. We have our FEMbassadors, and that stands for feminist ambassadors, not female ambassadors, and men can be feminists. And so we have males that are involved. Like I said, we have our Men as Allies group, which is a big part of what we do and what we workshop. And there are men and women who belong to that Men as Allies group. And so I want to make sure that everybody knows that they're welcome, and that we would love to have everybody help out and everybody kind of be involved.
Course. And the wealth of opportunities that are available to our students is so great. And to not take advantage of it would not allow you to have a full Krannert experience. So I stress that to all of our viewers, and also the FEMbassadors. An amazing job, because you're right, without them nothing would happen, and you can only lead so much, and there's so many other ways that you can get involved. So it's absolutely wonderful you have such amazing students working for you. It's
yeah,
awesome.
They're great. I mean, Krannert students are the best, and I'm not saying anything about other Purdue students, but I am kind of saying something about other Purdue students. Krannert students are the best.
Meara, we would never lie. We don't need to lie, right?
That's right. There's no need to lie.
Very true.
So,
wonderful. And then my other question is, I think you did mention this, but to anyone who is not a Krannert student, they could still be involved within the Brock Wilson Center, right? Okay.
Absolutely. So we are open. Our hope is, I mean, we are a Krannert Center because we have a Krannert alum who funded us, but our hope is that we touch everybody on campus. So as we move through some of the See Her initiatives with diversity, our hope is to be kind of pairing up with other groups on campus, like the cultural centers, other women in programs, both in engineering, science, ag, technology, right? Our hope is that we will actually kind of encompass a lot of different majors. We want to be a force on campus. We don't want to just be a force at Purdue. I mean, at Krannert. We want to be a force. We do want to be a force at Purdue. And so that's the hope, is that kind of everybody becomes welcome. And our learning community, actually, we have a number of students. We get a pretty good group that are not Krannert students, sociology, pharmacy, political science, all, because, you know, honestly, Emily, and you know this, we teach this in Management 100. Everybody works in a business. Everybody's going to eventually have a job, some kind of job, right? And so we're open to everybody. Any majors, welcome. Any person who has interest, welcome. Any alumni from any college, welcome as well. So please join us no matter what.
Wonderful. I'm happy I asked, because you are right. I think to be a manager of a team takes a lot of skill, and just to learn a few things could go a really long way. So that's awesome.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. We all will work in teams at some point, and I think that's something Krannert teaches well.
I agree. I agree. Which is awesome. And okay, so just to wrap up here, we'll make sure all of the links and tags for social media are shared with all of you, because we want you to get involved with this. We don't want to just host an Instagram Live for you to learn something and completely forget about it the next day.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure all of that information is here for you. So be sure to check out Purdue Krannert on Instagram, Facebook. All this information will be shared here, as well as the Brock Wilson Center on Instagram and on Facebook as well. Am I right about that? Okay.
Yep. So this should be shared to Facebook. And then we also have a Twitter page and a LinkedIn page. So feel free to follow us there as well. So
wonderful. Which is awesome. Again, all of those links will be shared with you. Meara, thank you so much for being here today and just sharing all the information. I'm so excited about this. I think it's going to be really great.
Thanks, Emily. I'm so glad we got to connect too. I haven't seen you in forever, so it's kind of nice to see your face. It's nice to see anyone's face right now, honestly.
I agree. I know. I think I'm going to head over to Krannert in a little bit, go to some class. mask up, socially distanced.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I tried to lecture mask up and shield up, and it got really hot. So I just shield off, mask on behind the
Okay.
plexiglass, and I seem to be
Yes,
okay.
the
Yeah.
plexiglass is very fun to walk around with. I feel like
Yeah.
that's an extra thing,
It's real.
which is awesome.
It was difficult to navigate this morning.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not gonna lie.
doubt. There's always that table right in the center, and then you're trying to go back to the
Right.
computer.
And
There's a
is it
lot
going to
to do.
block the screen? Or yeah, it was fun. I think my students laughed a couple of times.
Of
Only though,
course.
only a
How
couple
could
of
you not?
times.
Only a
Yeah.
couple. How could you
Yeah.
not?
So
Wonderful. Thank you again, Meara. Have a wonderful day. And it was
you
so great
too.
talking to you.
You too, Emily. Stay safe.
Bye. You too. Thank you.
Bye.